Thank you for joining Effortless Attraction. My name is Evelyn McAleer. I'm the author of A Life You Want, Effortless, and The Woman's Journey. I'm a life coach, business mentor, and inspirational speaker. And my greatest value is making a difference in people's lives. So I hope through these podcasts, I can make a difference to your life. A little bit more information before we pop on over to the podcast. So we're currently residing in the stunning province of Almeria in the south of Spain. As an extension of my mentoring and life coaching services, I'm now offering 4-night retreats tailored for women who are ready to prioritise themselves. So if you're a woman and you're interested in spending quality time with myself and 2 other participants, please visit my website for more details. Additionally, for business leaders and coaches who wish to have their own retreat here in Spain with their clients, I handle all of your logistics, including airport transfers, accommodation and meals for your group. If you'd like to request a retreat proposal, kindly send me an email. You'll get all of my contact information in the description below. Thank you.
Effortless Attraction podcast is sponsored by Colette Leeson Interview and Career Coaching. If you dream of landing your ideal job, consider Colette's services. With a success rate exceeding 90% among her interview clients, Colette offers personalized career guidance and interview coaching discreetly, both online and in person. She also conducts workshops and provides career advice talks. For further details, visit ColetteLeeson.com.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on another Effortless Attraction podcast. Well, today I have a returning guest. His name is Mickey Coleman. Now, this big introduction, I near run out of breath earlier on practicing this. President of Shoreline Builders, LLC in New York. Motivational speaker, author, musician, and most importantly, husband and father. Mickey, you're very welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be back, Evelyn. Thanks for having me.
Well, for anyone that doesn't know Mickey, if you want, you can go back over the podcast. We done one, I think it was a year ago, on a near-death experience. So I'll not go over the whole story of that again, but let's put it like this. He saw the light. And from we have spoke last, Mickey, you have became an author. Your book is called Pulse, and it's a memoir on life, near death, and a new life. So tell us about the book.
So the book, we actually, it'll be a year now since we launched. We've done a full launch back in Ireland there and here in New York. Yes, the book kind of happened by accident. I had done an interview with Damien Lawler at RTE shortly after my illness and in the recovery. And the topic just came up about doing a book, and I was like, Jesus, what would I be writing a book about, So he thought there was maybe some value in that. Then long story short, Damien Harvey, from Tyrone, who would have been the Tyrone PRO at the time, Damien approached me as well and thought there was something in it. So I says, all right, well, sure, we'll give it a go and see what happens. And, we probably spent a good year writing the book, back and forth. Damien ghost wrote the book. So then he came out here to finish it. And there was a lot of, Zoom calls every week going through stuff. And it was a good experience. It was very challenging. What I realised when I was proofreading the book, I remember I read it like 5 times in the weekend, just for proofreading purposes. But from the initial starting point of the book and the finish point of the book, and I write this at the beginning on the forward of the book, is that the book was almost like therapy in a way. When I went back to reading it, at the start I was tearing up and thinking, Jesus, was that actually me? Was I in that place? Because I wanted to be very honest account of my recovery. The book covers a lot of things from my childhood, growing up in the Troubles in the North and all the usual stuff that we had to deal with. But on a personal level, I really wanted it to be honest. And I said to Damien before I'd done the book, and I had to actually go and talk to a few people because I'd be dragging them into the story, and I wanted to make sure they were comfortable with all that. But I really wanted it to be a true account of me, and that meant going back to places that I didn't, probably wasn't that comfortable going back to, and stoking the flames again of past pain and stuff like that. And I'm solely talking about my recovery. And when I went back and read the book, that's exactly what I felt. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe we actually had forgotten about some of the things that we talked about or the feelings at that time. Because, when I started writing the book, and even probably when I had the last conversation with you, it's amazing how we are able to progress. Like when we last spoke, I thought I was well on the road, and I was, but I've came so much more even since then, mentally, physically, spiritually, all of those things. And I think every day is just an evaluation of where you are, and that it's a constant thing that you're working on. It's never just a done deal. I fixed that. Let's move on. It's not like that. But reading the book in particular, um, I went back to a lot of places and I wasn't even aware of at the time. When I was writing it, that how deep I was in my recovery and the dark place that I was in to where I'm at now. It was like it's good to have it, because even if I lift the book up now and read a page or two, it's a reminder, because sometimes you can get ahead of yourself, and it's a good stark reminder of, maybe you're not fully in control as you think.
Lost the run of yourself, as I say.
Exactly, yeah.
But Mickey, isn't it a lovely thing for your children, even to always have something that daddy done, or the blessings that they don't have to go through what you also went through, whenever, you're a lad growing up in Ireland, and they don't have that perhaps in New York.
It's my oldest son now is reading the book, and I was kind of reluctant to let him read it because he's at an age now where he's understanding a lot of things, and it was actually great because he's reading chapter and he's coming back and he's at, Dad, I didn't know you done this, or I didn't know this is how you grew up, and I didn't know Nanny worked in a fish factory, and I didn't, like, all these little things that you wouldn't usually talk about. So it's great. It is absolutely great for them to have it. I'd prefer they didn't have to read the sickness side of it, maybe later on when they're a little bit older, but right now you try and shelter
Yeah.
them a little bit from that.
Well, how did all the book launches go? I'm sure
Oh,
it could
great
be
crack.
overwhelming also.
It was tough going. We had a tough week. Like, the publishers kind of set it up, and then away you go. So we done an opening night in where I'm from, in Arbo. We done Oma and we done Belfast. Um, and then in New York we done a city launch in the city here where I'm at now, and we done another one up where I'm living in Rockland County in Rockland, GA. So we had a really good time. It was well received, so very good.
Well, I'm still getting comments, as I sent you one the other day, of your last podcast and Effortless Attractions about making a difference in people's lives. And it's lovely to see comments, when something is to arrive or when someone is to read something or hear something at a time that they need to hear something. I'm sure you've had wonderful feedback from your book and other interviews you've done also, Mickey.
Well, yes, I have. I'm sure the bad ones wouldn't tell me, but the book, like, it's a direction in my life that I never expected that I'd be going, or certainly didn't think I'd be doing motivational talks, or talking about my experience. And like what I try to do, again, I try not to get too ahead of myself. I can only speak wholeheartedly about my experience and what I had to go through, and the kick in the backside that I got to wake up to reality and all those sort of things. So since the book, I've done a lot of book launches or talks, or Sunday lunches with the book, and speaking, and it kind of put me down a direction that I wasn't actually prepared for, because I'd never spoken motivationally, and then taking questions and maybe not having the right answers or all the answers. But again, when you're speaking, you have to be very true to yourself, and I just speak from my heart and what I experienced and how all of that impacted me. And like, I've done talks for businesses who have asked me to speak, and I say to them, look, listen, I can't help your sales. Like, that's not going to, that, like, inadvertently can, but I'm not going in there to say, like, I know business, or I'm going to help you, get to the point we need to get there. But what I can do is I can go in and talk to your staff, and I can certainly try and coerce them into being the best version of themselves, just based on my experience and what they're probably not doing, and what they're focusing on, and all that, all the buzzwords that we have. But the reality is, when you look at a lot of companies, and I look at my own company, and I look at my company prior to my illness, and I look at it after my illness, and the massive shift, and a lot of that is just on mindset and approach, and how and perspective, and how you're actually facing those situations. And one of those big things is, I always say, like, it doesn't matter how we get up this morning, happy, sad, angry, wonderful, all of those things. I always say it like, that sun's going to rise and it's going to set, and the rivers are going to flow, and trees will blossom, flowers will bloom. The world does exactly what it's supposed to do, but it's our perception of the world that doesn't do what it's supposed to do.
Mm.
Like, if you want to get up in the morning and you want to be, you want to see sadness and weakness and hatred and all of those things, or you can choose to get up in the morning and see love, hope, prosperity, well, then that's exactly what you're going to see as well. So you have to be very careful on what you're thinking and your approach. And all of those things I learned just in my recovery, to how I'm not saying I get up every day jumping out of the bed and I'm grateful and all this sort of stuff, because we're human, we're socially programmed, we have good days, bad days. The reality is, it doesn't matter. You're walking down that roadway of life, all these challenges keep coming at you. They're not going to stop coming at you. The obstacles are still going to present themselves, but it's how we react to those obstacles that ultimately puts us in a better place. And that's me speaking just from my own perspective. That's how I deal with it. I'm dealing with the same problems I was dealing with 5 years ago, maybe even larger ones, smaller ones, who knows? But it's how you react to those problems is ultimately going to be your outcome. If in your mind you're creating that into being something that's going to cripple you, then that's exactly what it's going to do. And the
I'm
reality
thinking,
is,
was Mickey Coleman listening to our conversation before I come on this call? Not that he would have been. For I'm sitting talking, is he reading my mind now? Because these are the questions I was going down to ask Mickey, because I did want to talk, obviously, about your book. I loved our last podcast, and I'd like to leave that there. And I wanted to go on to your business too, because, as you said, the same problems before your illness still arise today. And you said something there, and I'm reminded of there's a wee thing that I'd say on our group. Wayne Dyer, a wee line out of something that he had said: "There can be no obstacle or undesirable circumstance to the great mind of God, which is in me, around me, and serves me now." I ran out of breath. Which serves me now. And we can use that word God as spirituality, universal energy, mindset, or conscious mindset there. And you are successful in what it is that you're doing yourself, Mickey. And I see your stuff up on LinkedIn. Isn't it amazing the different sides, or you can see of different people? I see Mickey Coleman, the musician, Mickey Coleman, the president of Shoreline Construction, Mickey Coleman, the author. They're all these, but then it's just Mickey Coleman.
that's all it is. They're just fancy titles, I suppose. At the end of the day, the reality is, like you mentioned Wayne there. I actually quote him a lot in my book, because I don't know how I came across him, but in the early stages of my cardiac rehab, I stumbled across Wayne Dyer, and I just fell in love with him. And I've read every one of his books, and Erroneous Zones, if anybody hasn't read it, should read it. There's also another great book, and it sort of hits on what we're talking about, is that there's a spiritual solution to, every question. Like, and he's phenomenal, like, because
Yeah.
he kind of related to me, because he put it in layman terms, and he was able to relate. He does he's a great saying. It's a metaphor of an orange. And he says, if you take an orange and you squeeze it really hard, what comes out of it? And it's orange juice, it's never apple juice or grapefruit juice and all this kind. And he says that's exactly the same thing with your life, with your thoughts. So be careful what you think, because when you get squeezed with the pressure of life, what are you personifying then? Because if it's anger, anxiety, all of those things, well, then that's exactly what you personify. So there's
Yeah.
two things that I kind of done, that I kind of steer towards when I'm, to try and keep myself on the right track where I need to be, because it's very easy to go down the rabbit hole again. It's very easy to get sidetracked, particularly if you have a bad day or something doesn't go particularly the way you wanted to go, or, you're raising a family, business, whatever we're all doing, we all have our own struggles in life. Um, but the two things that I do every single day to try and keep me on the path that I want to be on is I wake up in the morning and I face the day with complete gratitude. And whatever God you pray to, that's entirely your own business. But I bless myself and I thank God that I opened my eyes, because I know that a lot of people didn't get that opportunity this morning. Um, and I then try to truly live in the present moment as much as I can. And that can be quite difficult at times, because I know a lot of people be thinking about their mortgage payments, their car payments, their kids' tuition or college, particularly here. All those things, particularly coming up to Christmas. Where's the money coming out of, for all of them things? And the reality is, you're building yourself into a, a zone where you're stressing more than you're actually living. And like, my definition of stress would be when you're actually giving the next moment more attention than the actual moment. That's my definition of stress, because when you're focusing on what might be tomorrow or what might be the next payment, well, then you're truly not living in the present moment. And if you truly live in the present moment, you're going to live a much more fulfilled life, because you have food in your belly, you have a roof over your head. We're having a wonderful conversation, and really, that's really all we're in control of when you think about it. Because I know as well as anybody, I know that tomorrow's not guaranteed, because I left this office 3.5 years ago, talking like I'm talking now, and I went up the road, and 3 hours later, I was fighting for my life. So it's easy for me to say that because I got the kick in the backside.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder for people that haven't got that kick in the backside to fully understand that, and I appreciate that. I don't expect them to be there, but that's the reality. So gratitude in the morning and trying to truly live in the present moment, and a lot of that changes things. When you live in the present moment, you're going to change. Your thought process is going to change. You're going to become a different person, whether you like it or not, and all for the better.
Well, isn't that a great blessing in looking back now when you said you got the kick up the backside? Because if you hadn't have got that kick up the backside, I think Mickey Coleman might have been a different Mickey Coleman today.
And we're learning every day. Like, I learn in my business every day. I've a lot of good mentors. I'm learning from people. I learn from my staff. Like, if you think you've it figured out, you're badly mistaken. And I love all that, because you try to be like a sponge. There's so much you can learn from your kids. You can learn from other people's kids. It's just you can absorb it all in. And I feel like prior to that, you locked yourself out of that. You're shielding yourself. And I say this particularly to a lot of men, because I was that person that, you have to be the alpha male, you have to be the breadwinner, you can't show any weakness, you don't show emotion, you get up and you get on with it. And that's kind of how we were reared. Not, purposely, but that's kind of how we grew up. And it's so counterintuitive. It's absolutely the opposite. You don't have to be that person. And I say, 41 years it took me to figure out who I was, because it sounds ridiculous, but I was practically lying to myself at the same time, because I was at a funeral last week, and he was a tycoon of the construction industry out here, and he's a fellow Tyrone man, Pat Donaghy, who founded the Structure Tone organisation. They're one of the biggest building organisations in the world right now, and I was very fortunate to be asked to play at Pat's funeral. And Pat's son gave a lovely, lovely, lovely eulogy of him, but he said that Pat was all into poems and motivational poems, even back in the 70s when he founded Structure Tone. And if you saw the organisation that he had, there's no mistake where it's at. But one of those poems that Pat was very fond of was The Man in the Glass.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a phenomenal poem, and I came across it back in 2003 when Mickey Hart gave it to us before an All-Ireland final. But I've always had that poem in my possession, and it was just very ironic that James Donaghy had mentioned about that poem. But in that poem, it basically says you can fool everybody down the pathway of life, but if you're not friends with the man in the glass in the mirror, and that's yourself, well, then you're wasting your time. And that's what I found out after my heart attack, is that you truly have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, do I actually love me? And am I the best version of myself for me, not for your wife, not for your children, not for your brothers, sisters. Because if you're not truly the best version of yourself for yourself, you're no good to anybody else.
Yeah.
Because it has to start from point A.
And then do you feel, or do you see this in businesses that you're going out to speak at too, Mickey? And it may be an age thing, I don't know, but the striving to have the striving now, what you're living now, the dream, what would be seen as the dream. People would say, well, I'll take Mickey Coleman's life, but they mightn't take the wee bits in between that Mickey Coleman had to go to have
Listen,
what
I
Mickey
always say,
Coleman has.
again, everything's perspective. If we all sat in a room and threw our crosses into the room, and in the middle of the room, and you heard everybody's story, you would take your own back. So
Mm-hmm.
that's simple. Like, if we all lived the life of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, there'd be no problems in the world, you know. And I think the sooner we get away from that, the better, because it's all a facade. 99.9% of it. It's I see it all the time. I see it when I go to businesses. I see it when I go to job sites. I see it all the time. I see a lot of people have a lot of anger built up in them. There's a lot of stress. But here's what you always have to remember: like, if I'm going on to a job site, or you have a work colleague or somebody you're not particularly getting on with, and they're coming at you at 100 miles an hour and they're angry towards you or aggressive, that's not your problem, and it ain't my problem. I feel sorry for that person, and I feel I would approach 5 years ago. The Mickey Coleman would have come out fighting fire with fire and guns blazing, and well, F you and F him and this, not another, and everybody else would be going hell for leather. That's the wrong approach. But that Mickey Coleman didn't know any better. So when I see that now, when I go on the job sites and I see boys coming shouting and roaring, and them guys are not content within themselves, and that's them relaying that onto you. That is not your problem. I just let them roar away and say that after you, all right, it's everything okay, you feeling all good. And it's amazing. And I say, it's a Wayne Dyer saying too, you're right about that. When you soften a situation like that you're not fighting with fire, and you say, you know what, you're 100% right about that. I actually never thought about that from your perspective, but I'm glad that you highlighted that to me, and I'll take that on board. That doesn't mean to say that person's right, but you're feeding that person's ego, and you're dissolving the situation, and you're lowering the flame, and miraculously you now become more powerful than you actually think you are. That's where the power lies. But that's not an easy thing to do when somebody's coming at you at 100 mile an hour.
Because I have a good friend there. He goes out and does a lot of heart-based stuff, really, around companies from management. So you're the president of Shoreline. You're the head brigadier, the OC. It stems from you. So it's like you set the example.
You do. That doesn't mean to say you're coming in smiling and chirpy all day long. You still have to work, and things have to get done and executed, and there's still strategy, and there still has to be structure, and there still has to be a whole game plan to get it over the line. The reality is, if I come in here and I have an estimating team or quantity surveyor sitting here, and I'm saying, right guys, what are we priced? What's going on? Boom, 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 and I'm ticking all the boxes. Well, then you just become another organization that just ticks the boxes. And we're not in the sales game in here, even though we need sales and to win contracts. But I'm in business with people and the people that work for me, because I can only build Shoreline as much as I can. I can only take it to a certain level. I'm dependent on everybody else around me to take Shoreline to the next level. And it becomes much bigger than just a company that Mickey Coleman started or has set up. Because now I have people that work in this office and on my job sites that are dependent on a paycheck to pay their mortgages, to put their kids through college. They're dependent on it. So it becomes much bigger than just Mickey Coleman after a while. But the secret for me has been, instead of coming in and saying this, all this stuff being done, is how was the weekend? How are the kids doing? How's everybody keeping at home? And having a proper conversation and meaningful conversation that you do actually hear. And it's amazing when you start to take that approach, how things start to change. And it's a culture shift. Like, you have to change the culture. And you're going to have to weed out some of the negative energies that don't fit that culture. And I've had to do that as well. And I don't take any great pleasure in doing that. But you do it quick and you do it fast. And at times you might even question what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is you go with your gut energy and your gut feeling and you know when it's right. Like, and when I made that shift in here, everything changed for me. Everything started to change. And people love, I'm assuming they love coming in here and we have the crack, but we get things done.
Yeah.
But they still understand the importance of it's still a company, it still has to function and all those things have to happen, but it doesn't have to be a regimented place where you're coming into dread and you spend most of your week here. I want you to be enjoying it.
Because they take that home to family as well.
Absolutely. And this sounds ridiculous. And if any business owners are watching this, they're going to think it's ridiculous. But I think if you do, you should try it. I say to everyone in this office, you'll never do any overtime in here. I will never ask you to do 1 minute of overtime. If you choose to do that, that's entirely up to yourself. There's no expectation on you to do that because if you can't do it in the 8 hours that we're in here, then I don't need you taking it home. Now, if there's a one-off situation, which there never has been, where something needs to hit a deadline or we're under pressure to get a tender in or something like that, that's a different story. But I have actually sent people home out of this office. I says, get out of here. You have a wife and kids at home, or you have a husband and kids at home. Away you go. But I says, it'll be done tomorrow. Don't worry about it. And that's the reality because you have to set that standard. Because if you have people coming in the door in the morning that are feeling it and are being the best version of themselves, well, then I can only win.
Yeah.
If I'm getting the best version of Evelyn into my business tomorrow morning, I'm winning. I'm playing with an A team. But if I think I'm getting a B player in here and we have a B team, so it's about understanding all of that and understanding that there's many different personalities. And again, I talk about this in the book because I don't have a business background. I knew nothing about coming into business, how it runs, and particularly the construction business in New York City is very cutthroat, and you need high octane, and it can be full on. And I talk about in the book, I struggled at the start to put all the pieces together. I knew nothing about income statements, balance sheets, general ledgers, knew nothing about all that stuff. About having a controller and accountant on board and a director of operations and director of project management and field directors and all this stuff. Hadn't a clue. And then I said, how do I get my head around all this? And I actually set it up in my head like a football team. And I said, right, if I'm playing middle of the field, who's my goalkeeper? Is that the accountant? He stops all the stuff going in. And, if somebody's not performing, would they be on the sub bench today or would they be playing? Or would I, as a manager, go and talk to them and say, listen, John, there's more in you here, or you can play better. And so it kind of took that approach and it's worked for me so far.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep that approach.
No, that's great. Well, that's it. All visualization, isn't it?
100%.
And attracting the right people. But sure, Mickey, as you said, through getting to understand you better. If you understand you, then you mightn't fully understand everybody else, but you have a deeper insight and intuition, and as you say, energy and all of that. Listen, Mickey, I know you have a meeting to go to. You're very busy. Thank you for fitting me into your hectic schedule.
All right.
If people, just let us know, want to get their hands on your wonderful book, where did they get it?
The book can be got on Amazon. So you can get hardback, paperback. So that's the main source. A few stores around Tyrone have them, Sheiky's have them, and a few other places. But the best place would be online, I would suggest.
On Amazon. And any companies out there now that are listening, think, there's a man our company could be doing with. Where do they find you there, Mickey?
Oh, they'll find me all right. Don't do the social media.
It's getting rid of him.
But listen, I'll not be hard to find now, that's for sure.
He's LinkedIn, Mickey Coleman, and you have Shoreline. Your business is another LinkedIn one. You're on Facebook.
I'm taking a break from social media as past 6 months just to. I think that's.
But you should actually on your football team there have somebody that does I'm sure you do, your social media.
We have someone that does the company's social media.
Yeah.
I just think it's good, and particularly in this day and age, to take a bit of a detox from all of that stuff and just get your thoughts together and do the meditation and do all that fun stuff that keeps the head right, because It's
Well,
constant.
now I will be putting this and advertising this on social media.
I do not worry about that one bit. I just hope it helps somebody, and I've seen a lot of the messages you got there from people, and I got a few private messages from that as well. So, there's always people who've gone through tough.
Yeah. But that was a big thing, Mickey. I remember doing that podcast and you know, people knew you, Mickey Coleman, and they knew you as the musician or in Tyrone. You played for county football. I actually left that out of my introduction, played county. Uh, and for a man then to come out with, well, I near died and I had an out of body experience, which is brilliant. I love people that have these conversations so that others might sit back and, what do you think of that podcast? Do you think there's anything of it? But at least it's opening up a discussion for
Well, you know
opening
what
the
I've
mind.
learned? What I've learned over the last 3 years that, and I've done a lot of talks on the whole spiritual out of body experience. I've done a lot of, but what I've really learned is that a lot of people are not ready for that conversation. And that's like if I was to give a percentage on it, I'd say about 20% of people are ready for that conversation. And the people that are ready for it are people that have suffered a terminal illness or have a terminal illness, that have went through some grievances, have lost somebody, or someone that is going through tough times. Them's the people that have an ear for this. And I have been ridiculed. I have been, your man's not right in the head, but that's fine. Maybe I'm not right in the head. But the reality is, I do not care who you are or where you come from. At some point in your life, you're going to be that person, and there's no avoiding it. You're going to have a tough time in your life, regardless of who you are. It might not happen to your 50, it mightn't happen to your 70, it might happen when you're 10. Some people get dealt different hands. But I'm telling you right now, I was cruising through life, and out of the blue, I was catapulted into a place that I would not wish it on my worst enemy. And that I was not prepared for that or ready for it. And the reason that I talk about that stuff when I'm asked is that if I can help, if my book can help one person get out there, I'll say that, well, then the book has done its job and I've done my job. And I say that all the time. And I've had face to face conversations. I've had people telling me that what I experienced was a neurological lack of oxygen when I was took my widowmaker, that my heart had stopped in your brain and it was these chemicals. And I'm saying, all right, so that's, you're entitled to your opinion. But that doesn't deter me. I know what I seen, I know what I felt, I know how it changed my life, and I'll take that to my grave.
And I've had conversations with several people. I'm glad I'm in your 20% because I could have this conversation all day long anyway. Um, but again, it's trusting your intuition and your feeling of the person that's sharing and telling the story. There's not some big sales thing, which is not for you, Mickey. I think you'd make a good mentor, Mickey. Did you ever think of going down that road? But then that means you have to let your client speak.
That'll be difficult, won't it? But listen, we all remember the first time we fell in love, and you talking about feelings. Like, if the very first time you fell in love, it was a wonderful feeling, like, and you would have driven to Cork at 4 o'clock in the morning if they'd have called you to fix a flat tire, and then a year later you'd be telling them, nobody called me at 4 o'clock in the morning. But if you could just take that feeling and keep it with you for the rest of your life, we'd all live so much different lives, like, wouldn't we? Like, but what changed? The only thing that changed was the energy. Like, it's when you start getting into the bones of it, like, it's fun. I think it's very fascinating.
It is. It is. And if you can, even with meditation, when we do it, I do it with our group on a Tuesday morning there, but it takes you to this lovely place. And you nearly don't, when you come back, then it's different anyway. It feels very different. But you're saying there are different tips and points that you can put in. Number one, when you open your eyes in the morning, a gratitude. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I get to open my eyes today. And probably when you go to sleep at night, before you close your eyes, a thank you. You spoke about earlier being present, being mindful of the thing. If we can stay in the present moment, and then when we're in the present moment, she could give gratitude for anything. You were stuck in traffic today. You had a choice. You text me, and I get your nicotine in that, and this woman will be going mental, this woman. And at the end of the day, however I choose to respond, it was not your responsibility. I could have went, you think Mickey Coleman would have been on time, but it is what it is. That's grand, no bother. And
Phenomenal.
yeah, so it's our intentions, I think, of where we're coming from and what other people, how they respond or react to something, that's their choice. And I absolutely believe it, we can make life easier on ourselves.
Well, you just said something there. That's their choice. I think we're all a product of our choices. The only people that tend to admit that are the people that do well. And what I mean by that is you'll always hear, Jesus, your woman done well for herself, didn't he? Or your man done well for himself. He's a self-made millionaire. You'll never hear, geez, your man's a failure there. They're doing too well for himself today. Like we're all a product of our choices. Like you can't you can't be defined by your circumstances. Like you just we don't all make the right choices, that's for sure. But we're certainly a product of our choices, and when we take responsibility and ownership of that, it's I guess it's like a bit of an addiction, I suppose. I don't know what that an addiction being an addict's like, but you're confessing to yourself, like you're giving in, you're surrendering. And in order to get inner peace and contentment, you have to surrender yourself to yourself. That's the reality. Can't get caught up in it.
Well, I would sit here all day, and I know it's probably one of my longer podcasts here too, but I've loved it, Mickey. Thank you so much for your time. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to another Effortless Attraction podcast. And you'll find Mickey when he comes back out of hibernation. He'll be somewhere on social media. Reach out to him for a bit of motivational, inspirational speaking, or you'll get his book on Amazon. Mickey, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Evan. Take care.